Okay, today's focus will be on the middle section of the South Branch. It's part 2 of a 3-part series focusing on the 1,000 acres we own along the river. We'll be doing Stanton Station up to Valinsky's today. Stanton Station is one of the older sections. Not all of it is actually trailed. Across the road is a small woodland we own that's actually a riparian forest. Get some flooded water. We've actually had some wood duck nests in there historically one year, and this does go back a bit. It was even home to the red-headed woodpecker. There's also, off on the far corner of the parking lot, a more open wet area with a bat house in it, thereby offering some riparian habitat for wildlife activity. The noise going crazy, I believe, is a chipmunk. I haven't looked for it, but we'll take a walk into the Stanton Station and find out what we can find today. I'm down underneath the bridge, just showing you a river shot. To see where I am, people might be familiar with this little building. It's the official river station for Stanton Station, measuring water levels and all. This access is also being used for people to launch canoes. The river here is slow enough that paddling upriver usually isn't much of an issue, up to about maybe about Sunnyside, and then you can also head downriver and pass underneath the 31 bridge. Again, just a river shot, the water station, or the measuring station for the South Branch of the Raritan River. Okay, again, focusing on a tree. As you can see, hopefully, a little further up, there are all these thorns off of the bark. This is actually one of my favorite trees. It's called honey locust. One of the tales I've always been told is the Native Americans would actually use the needles as sewing needles for puncturing holes in the leather and then stitching the material together to make their moccasins and their clothing. Honey locust is a legume. It gets a compound leaf, but is also known for the large seed pods that it gets come fall. But the kids always get amazed by those needles. Okay, this is tree number 2. It's, again, another favorite tree of mine. It's known for these broad heart-shaped leaves. It is a riparian obligate, meaning it needs the wetland environment. But this is American basswood. And again, it's the heart-shaped leaf that gives this tree away. One of the things I like about it is when it makes its seeds, they kind of look like these giant hang gliders. The seed is on a little stem that extends off of the leaflet, for lack of a better word, and it sort of paraglides to, when it's released by the tree, to disperse. But these broad heart-shaped leaves off of trees near the river edge, again, is American basswood. It needs the exposed soil to actually make for the seed to implant in order to grow. So it actually depends on a little bit of an erosion cut or exposure to disperse and germinate its seed. Taking advantage of a vernal pool, This green frog is here. Potentially trying to, might be calling a mate in time. I'm on the wrong side of it to see if it's a male or female. Males have a yellow throat, a little bit larger ear. But they do use temporary pools of water to stay away from fish. Not calling now because I've startled it, but this is the one that makes the banjo string call, the unk unk unk. One of the last of the breeders, quite common over at the pond at Echo Hill, or the Arboretum. Not far down the initial part of the trail, you'll see a little sign saying stay on trail next 700 feet. This is because there's an easement here. For the next 700 feet, the county actually does not own the actual land. We have an easement or permission where we've purchased the right from the owner to connect property by crossing private land. So we technically only own or have use of the trail base itself for that distance. So this is an area where we have permission to use and connect and hike, but it's not technically county property. Okay, hopefully you just heard that one call, the here. It's one of the more common birds for the summer. Usually we'll answer a pish. It's a little gray bird with a crest. And if you haven't fully guessed by now, that's the call of the tufted titmouse. It's actually a common feeder bird. Sometimes the call may sound a little harsher and sound like Peter, Peter, Peter. But the three noted here is the tufted titmouse. Okay, this is one of the little creek drainage systems that run through Stanton Station. I picked this one for multiple reasons. The first being, just on the other side of it is where the county land starts again from the easement. Also because, again, with how lush it is, it's a bit more of a noisier area. Just not hearing anything new right this moment. But also, growing amongst the vegetation is jewelweed. I don't know if it's going to show, but jewelweed gets its name because little beads of water will develop on the leaf, and they will have sort of a special iridescence to them to make the water droplets glow like a jewel. I'm trying to get on the one and keep it in the sunlight for you. It also will create in time a sort of orangey yellow flower. Myth has it that jewelweed, the nectar, or the liquid from the flower head, could be used as a possible cure for poison ivy. However, I am quoting off the top of my head, so I will leave it to you to fully research the myth around jewelweed. But it is in an area where moisture is common. It's not going to be growing in a dry area of the forest. This is a picture of a tiger spiketail. It's about a 3-inch long dragonfly, recently seen in Stanton Station. It is an obligate to woodland creeks. It's not a creature of open areas, but it is also a species of concern and is in decline. It is prone to habitat disturbance as well as groundwater contamination, and is a recognized species of concern for the state, and we have taken action to notify the state of our findings. About halfway into Stanton Station, you sort of hit this woodland site where there's no underground vegetation really at all. The only spot I see is off in the distance there, which is a fern bed where a sunspot is hitting the ground. I truly can't explain this hard vegetation line change. It can't really be that attributed to deer, because deer would be more of a universal constant over all of this habitat. The only speculation I can give is that we're actually approaching a little null in the property, and it's the northern slope effect. So not really a lot of direct sunlight makes it to the ground to be a benefit to the vegetation. That would be the herbaceous layer. Therefore, we get an area that's just dominated by the trees, and until the ground rises or there's enough end of a shadow effect, there is no herbaceous layer in the area. Again, it's speculation, it's assumption, draw your own conclusions. Okay, I just rolled a log. Underneath it is this little bug called a pill bug, but it's actually not an insect. And I just spooked it, trying to turn it over, and lost it. If you flip any logs, you'll find them, or the garbage cans at Echo Hill. It's actually a land crustacean. It actually has 10 legs, but it's one of the decomposers that, again, turn the old material back into soil. Okay, I'm at the top of the knoll. You can see that the herbaceous layer is restarting. And again, in my opinion, it all has to do with the sunlight hitting the ground. Because wherever it's shadow cast is where the weak herbaceous layer exists. It's a bit more lushier, you're a bit more higher elevation. It's not a bad climb up to the knoll, but enough to make your heart beat a little bit harder. But I've had some luck with birds at this point because of it being the high point and the lusher vegetation in the region for the songbirds. Just today, nothing's really calling. I'm also going to turn around soon, but because Stanton Station is a one-way trail, there's no loop here. You continue on from here, you'll eventually hit the power line cut, and the trail cuts over to an access point that we have on Old Clinton Road. One way, I think it's just a little over or around 1 mile. So with a brisk pace and all, you could probably do there and back in an hour or so, depending on what you're trying to do with your hike. Okay, I'll try to get a little bit closer in a second, but in front of me on the stones are a couple of tiger swallowtails. What they're doing is called puddling behavior, picking up moisture and then laying their proboscis on the mud to get minerals out of the mud. But if I get too close, I know I'm going to spook them. And of course, now they're proving me wrong. Tiger swallowtails are again probably one of our most common butterflies. If I remember correctly, the blue in the back of the tail is indication of the male. For some reason this one doesn't want to move. I'm not sure why. It doesn't look injured to me, but there is a little bending to the one tail. They do get a black phase, but they'll still have the blue and yellow at the tips of the tails. And of course the name swallowtail refers to the appendages off the back of the tail, the extensions, hence the name. And again, eastern tiger swallowtail. And I don't know why this one had stayed around, but it was kind enough to show it to us. It could just be that it's drying its wings, but I'm going to let it be and let nature take its course. Okay, we're now at Sunnyside. There are a few picnic tables here as well as the grove. It's another common spot for fishing and canoe access. Does have a bit more formal of a parking lot. And the river is right over there. I'll get a shot of it in a little bit. We'll do at least half of the park out to, I think it's still Clinton Road. But I'll point out the Fisherman's Trail on the other side. Depending on what we're seeing, will determine if I go down it any. But again, I'm always trying to leave a little bit of the park unexplored for you when you come and visit on your own. But again, this will be Sunnyside, and we'll begin and see what we find. This is a shot of the river just below the bridge. I just flushed out a female common merganser, but waterfowl is often sighted along this stretch of river. Also possible is a bald eagle. There is a nest, which I won't give the location of, that's not far away from here, and will often be seen flying in the river corridor. The slope to the river access has gotten a little bit steeper, so I don't know how often canoes might use it anymore, but again, fishermen are still going to use it. But there's a shot of the access coming down. Okay, this is the grove. There's a tree here for every county resident lost during the 9/11 tragedy. Some have the name plaque, some don't. It was family's wish. But this is the memorial that the county put in on a nice scenic spot of Sunnyside, looking over the river, with the memorial plaque, trying to remember those lost that day. Okay, I believe it was on the Woodfern Trail that I talked about the maple seeds, the samaras. If you look at the angle of these, you could almost draw a linear line from tip to tip going through the samara. These seed pods are actually of Norway maples. Okay, again, the angle in which the wings disperse is an indicator of the species. So by seeing that and not being able to get the leaves of this maple tree, I still know it's a Norway maple based on the seed. Okay, across the road from me is the entrance to the Fisherman's Trail. It's a non-developed area of Sunnyside that dead ends in about a half a mile towards the railroad tracks. The primary user are the fishermen, hence its name, heading out to their various fishing holes. I came out from the formal side here by the guardrail and the bridge, but we'll head down the Fisherman's Trail to see if we can find anything to talk about. I know this is not fair, but there appears to be a little mound in front of me. If it's showing there's a little bit of chocolatey color to the water, believe it or not, I just flushed, and it ran for the river, a muskrat. Muskrats are one of the least common of our aquatic mammals. They exist in marshy fringe areas. They're very small from a beaver, hence why my guess was a muskrat based on the size of the animal. But there's a little trail right here. Don't know if it's really showing out where it was up, and it was up here eating the fresh vegetation, which is something more prone to a muskrat and not a beaver. Beavers do exist along the South Branch, but again, they're more wooded area. There's no evidence around me of beaver chew. So again, drawing my assumption to that of a muskrat. It's probably not going to come back anytime while I am standing here. But it looks like the area is being invaded by Japanese knotweed. So it's a very dense spot, but easy enough for the muskrat to push through. So who knows what you'll find walking along the river. Some of the biggest trees along Sunnyside and in the fisherman's area you'll find kind of look like the tree may not be doing well, because if you go up towards the top of the tree, it looks like it's losing all its bark. However, the tree is healthy, and as the name implies, it's just an illusion, because this tree is the sycamore. I always kind of do a little Poe joke about sick evermore. But these are actually wetland obligate trees like the basswood. They need exposed soil in which to germinate the seed. They make these little ball structures in time that can have probably 300 plus seeds in them and disperse on the wind like dandelions. So they need the open soil, the erosion cuts in which to germinate. One of the things you could try to do perhaps is, if you wish, in the wintertime, head up to Point Mountain, hike up to the overlook, and then look from the overlook down at the river, and you'll see all these white bonish trees that demarcate the river. They are the sycamores, because again, the top of the trees have a bone white color to them. The leaves, which I don't have in front of me, make you think of a maple tree. But what's unique is not only the fact that it's an alternate tree, but if you look at the stem of the leaf, there's a hidden cup to it, because the leaf totally encloses the bud of the branch while the leaf is attached. And there's this little cup depression left in the stem when the leaf falls off. But again, the largest trees along the river, the fattest trees perhaps is a better way of saying it, are most likely going to be your sycamores. Okay, hopefully they'll call again. If I am hearing this bird correctly, it just went. This is a call that sounds like a robin, but is a bit harsher. Actually, I think I might see it. Okay, this is the call of a scarlet tanager, one of our brightly colored songbirds, bright crimson red with strong black wings, often quoted as being robin-like, but in need of voice lessons. Did make it out to the railroad tracks, and as you can see, the trail just sort of peters out up there by the line. However, the tanager, the muskrat sighting, did make the walk worthwhile. Again, about a half mile for the length, and if it's still present, again, the tanager was actually out here by the end of the trail. And hopefully you caught that one last call. Again, it is a county breeder. Often can be, as I said, confused with a robin and overlooked by the novice, but it has like a little bit of laryngitis as indicated. One of the things you might be seeing along the trail is something that makes you think of a strawberry. They're called Indian strawberries, or they are not a wild strawberry. They are not edible. The rule is, unless you are 200% sure what it is, how to prepare it, nothing from the wild ever goes in your mouth. But again, the name implies what it looks like, and it is just something that you need to be observant for to pick out along your trail hikes. Okay, in front of me are the leaves of sassafras. If you remember correctly, I think it was the Musconetcong Gorge hike that I talked about sassafras and that it has 4 leaves. This one here is called the ghost shape. This one here would be the right hand mitten. Up here is just a straight oval shape. And then over here is the reverse mitten. So depending on how you argue the mitten shape, sassafras has 4 distinctive leaf shapes depending on which side of the ghost forms, or if it stays as a mitten shape with a right and a left opposable thumb. So again, just be aware that sassafras has multiple different shapes. However, the classic image used is usually the ghost. Centered in the image is a northern water snake. That dull grayness is a classic trait of the snake when dry. You can see a little bit of evidence of the patch pattern in it through the white marks that appear, but this is a snake to leave alone. There is an anticoagulant in its mouth when it bites that causes its prey to bleed to death, and if bitten on the hand or something for a human, it will bleed significantly. Please leave these snakes alone when you do discover them. This is the other side of Valinsky's, north of the bridge. It's basically just a car pullout. There are no trails in the woodlot over here, but as you can see, public is using it. It's a primary parking spot for access to the river, which is just on the other side of the road. You can see the bridge. It's also been used for a potential canoe launch, because this is the access that we can offer just south of the pumping station. And just give you a walk over to give you a shot of the river. Not the easiest slope to deal with, but if you hand over hand, it is possible to put a canoe in here. But again, primary use is the fishing holes that exist in this area. If you are hearing the bird, that's the eastern phoebe, probably nesting under the bridge. There's also a few swallows flying around. I did not get a good enough look to indicate which one. But again, another little area that exists for public use and access to the river is the Valinsky section. Okay, I'm at Valinsky's. The south side of the river property is called the Esterbrook Meadow. As you can see, there's a bluebird house here. I believe there's actually 6 of them and a kestrel box. all our possible sightings here, but traditionally tree swallows are the primary nester here, but you never know what other sightings might exist. It's a stop and scan, always worth a check. If you're a history buff, there's also a little stone building on the property. That's an old smokehouse that dates back to the 1800s that we've kept and preserved. Again, this is a stop and scan. There is no trail system here. You just don't know what you might find. For me, it was actually the place of my lifer for the falcon known as a merlin. So again, if you find yourself in the area, pull off, take a scan, and see what you're shown.